All right, what's up, everybody? Nestor Tarango with CEO of SolarWorks Energy. I'm here with Lance Sigmon of Alan Sigmon Real Estate. Thanks for taking some time to chat.
No, anytime.
We've been trying to coordinate this for a little bit. Lance, for the viewers, do you mind just telling us a little bit about your business, about what you guys do?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm a partner. I have a partner named Brad Allen. We have a commercial real estate development company called Alan Sigmon Real Estate Group, and basically we develop or invest or acquire commercial real estate. It ranges all different property types. You know, we have hotels, shopping centers, industrial warehouses, office buildings, retail strip center, all kinds of commercial real estate. We have a portfolio of about $300 million worth of commercial real estate. It's over around 1.6 million square feet of stuff, and basically that's what we do. We just develop or collect commercial real estate and try and get it to cash flow. So
$300 million. That's like hard to even fathom. But you have a really cool story because you're from Bernalillo.
Yeah,
right.
Bernalillo, New
You're
Mexico.
not from New York City. You're not from Los Angeles. You're from Bernalillo.
Yeah.
You went to school in Bernalillo.
Correct. Yes.
And I also know that you started out in pest control, door to door sales.
Yes.
Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It was really fascinating because I went on a 2-year mission for my church down to southern Argentina. And when I came back, one of the guys in church, this was when I was 19 years old, from 19 to 21. Well, I come back and I'm broke. I don't have any money, but I had to go to college and I was trying to save some money up. And a guy that I was going to church with came up and he said, "Hey, we just started this pest control company. Would you like to come, spray bugs and spray pest control and help us out?" And I was like, "Man, yeah, I would love to," because I needed to take a semester off just so I could save enough money to go to school. So I took a semester off and I worked for Preventive Pest Control, was the name of the company, and I sprayed houses for pest control. After doing that, he said, "Hey, this summer, would you like to come sell pest control? Come knock door to door and sell pest control in Albuquerque for us?" And I thought, sure, why not? So yeah, that was my summer job after my sophomore year of college.
So that's a really cool story because door-to-door sales, entry level guy to multi-millionaire. What a cool story. So I'm curious, do you feel like some of the skills that in doing that job helped set you up for a career in real estate?
Absolutely. A couple of the things that I learned about, my biggest takeaways from selling door to door were, one, you learn this uncanny ability to read people, social situations, conversations, body language. I mean, you think about it, you're a stranger knocking on someone's door at their home. They're coming to it and meeting you for the very first time. And there are all kinds of cues, things, you have your pitch, you have your talking points, whatever. You have all this stuff. And you're sitting there in a window of just a few minutes trying to get someone to spend money on a product that they may not even know they need or want or have or anything like that. All based on your interaction right there. And also, it's not the sexiest job in the world as far as, you meet someone for the first time, they're like, "What do you do for a living?" You're like, "Well, I sell pest control door to door." I mean, you can say it however you want, it just doesn't sound sexy. You can do whatever you want to, right? And so this idea, I think people I think they have used car salesmen here and maybe door-to-door salesmen slightly below, right? Just in a general contextual,
and just above convicts.
Right, yeah, just above convicts. Like, so you're out of prison now, this is your job. Right. Yeah. So anyway, there was that whole image that you had to overcome, and it required a great degree of just mental toughness. You're dealing with rejection a ton of time. And I don't know what it is for solar, but I mean, I wish I had the stats on how many doors I actually had to knock or people I had to talk to in order to just get one sale. And I'm sure I had them years ago, but I mean, just to deal with that rejection over and over and over again and still keep knocking on a door like if it was the first one you knocked for the day, right? You learn a level of toughness mentally that for sure helps you. And I'm not talking just in business. I have 4 kids. As a parent, right? There are so many things I've had to do as a parent that require mental toughness, or just in personal lives or relationships, not to mention just business, right? So invaluable, man. The skills you learn from door-to-door sales, totally valuable through the rest of your life.
And you know a thing or two about success, and I'm really curious to dive into kind of the minds of highly successful people. I mean, because you're probably in the top 0.01% of especially New Mexico, right? I mean, you're probably one of if not the biggest real estate developers in New Mexico. I'm just curious, what are some of the lessons that you've learned about mindset, and what does it take to become successful in whatever you do?
Sure. I think one of the key fundamentals to that is this concept that I call delayed gratification. And the ability to delay gratification now for something better in the future, whatever that is. So for instance, I remember, I grew up in a trailer house in Bernalillo there, and to have $100,000 was like amazing to me. Like that, I mean, I didn't know anybody that had $100,000 cash. And I thought, man, if I had $100,000 cash in the bank, that would be so cool. And I remember getting married and telling my wife, okay, here's our budget, here's what we have, and I had read these books by Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I love this idea of passive income. And I remember him measuring income in time, right? And so I used to think having $100,000 in the bank would make me rich. Well, Kiyosaki kind of changed my view a little bit, and he said, if you had $100,000 in the bank and your budget was $30,000 a year, you're slightly over 3 years rich, right? Because you take that 100,000, and if you don't do anything, it'll burn off in a little over 3 years, right? So I thought, man, I need to change my mind frame on what wealth is. I wanted to measure it in time and in cash flow. And I remember getting, my first rental property, and I had some passive income coming in. And at the time, my bills were $2,500 a month. And then I remember getting my third property, and the cash flow that I got off of my third rental property put me over $2,500 a month in positive cash flow. And I remember getting out of my pickup after closing that purchase and walking across the parking lot to my business and thinking, dude, I've arrived. Like, I'm here, man. All my bills are paid for with my cash flow. So now any other money I make, man, I was I was probably 25 years old.
Okay.
And I had kids at this time. I had all this stuff going on. But I remember thinking how grateful I was that my wife and I were able to live on $2,500 a month, have our budget, and delay gratification on, sure, she would have liked a bigger house, and I'm sure she would have liked a nicer car, but I paid cash for my cars. I didn't take out loans. I just lived really below my means so that I could take that money, invest it in buying real estate, and then once my cash flow got to be over my expenses, what was cool is all the commissions I made in the commercial real estate brokerage business could then be dumped into deals and investing. And it was just kind of this snowball. But if I hadn't been able to practice delayed gratification, and I would have harvested all of my, my chickens before they grew into hens, then I wouldn't have been able to save money to invest to then get that cash flow, right? So that delayed gratification was a huge principle for me.
I see that a lot, especially in our industry, where people aren't used to making money, and then they make a lot of money, and they start living like they're millionaires,
right?
And they buy the expensive cars, and they buy they start spending money that they didn't have before. And to your point, it's like, and I think part of it is that people just don't know maybe even how to invest. They've never done it. Their families, and my family didn't do any investing. I mean, my grandpa died poor, and my mom's super sick, poor, and so. What did somebody teach you that, or were you just reading books that were kind of guiding you?
That's a great question. So if you ask my parents, they'll tell you from the time I was little, I've just been a tightwad. Like I've just always saved my money. I was born with this real scarcity mentality, right or wrong, I don't know. But I've always, because I grew up poor, to me, money was always this precious resource that should be saved and not just squandered, because I didn't know when money was going to come again. And so from a little kid, I remember when I was 15 years old, I asked my mom to take me down to the Merrill Lynch place, or no, Morgan Stanley, sorry, and start my invest in the stock market. I wanted to open my first mutual fund, and I'd saved up, like I think it was like $1,100, and I put it in there. And so at 15, I had my first mutual fund, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna start saving for retirement, because I didn't want to retire before, right? So for me, it was always just a mindset as a kid. But I've tried to teach my own kids that they haven't grown up in the same circumstances I did. And I have a daughter who has a brokerage account. She has an Ameritrade account. She's on there, and I've taught her about investing and saving money and long term and delayed gratification. And so I think for some of us, it's just inherent, but it can totally be learned and taught. I think one of the problems for the kids nowadays are these phones are amazing tools, and I love them and I use it every day. But if I want to know what the weather is right now, what is the weather in any part of the world, I'll know like this. If I want to know facts about anything, if I want answers to most questions, if I want to buy something because I'm hungry and I want it delivered here, this tool provides me instant gratification. So the trick today in today's society is taking what we've been taught with instant gratification through technology and balancing that with this idea of delayed gratification, because true wealth isn't instant, it's delayed, and you have to work hard and you have to save. Those principles still exist even with technology, right? And so that's what I think most people, most kids and most youth and young adults today struggle with, is they're so used to getting rewarded instantly that sometimes it's hard for them to put in the hours they need, whether it's on the doors or whether it's investing and saving that they need to, because of this cultural shift, right?
Yeah, Instagram and seeing people flexing all the time and feeling like you're missing out.
Yeah, big FOMO deal going on.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you, how important do you think it is to have kind of like let me ask you this. Did you have a vision of what you wanted to achieve? So you got the passive income coming that's covering your expenses. Did you have a bigger vision than that, or was that kind of where, or how did your mindset change through that time?
I had a vision, and so one of my favorite books is Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, and so he talks about creating things kind of mentally first before they come to reality. And I'm a huge believer in that, and the power of positive thinking and the power of imagining you in possession of something that you currently don't have, whether it's material or social, whatever. I remember I was single when I read it. I thought, man, I would love to have a beautiful wife and a family, and I think about that. What kind of person do I want to marry, and what do I want to do with my kids, and this and that. And all those things have come to fruition as I've seen, I've already seen in my mind. I remember thinking, well, here's the house. I would love to have a kind of a French country house. And sure enough, today, my wife and I live in a beautiful French country house. You're in my 40s, we built that. And that took a long time, right? But I think this idea of having this vision is super important. When I was, to answer your question, when I first started in the business, I thought, if I could make $20,000 a month in passive income, I'm gonna retire. I'm done. I'll be there. That's like $240,000 a year. That's back in the day, that was more money than most of the doctors and attorneys I knew were making. I thought, man, then I'll just kind of hang out. Well, that came a lot quicker than I thought it would. And I remember sitting there going, man, that's not really that much money in the grand scheme of things, because then I knew guys that were making millions of dollars a year, and it kind of opened up my perspective. So I started out in the business with $20,000 a month in mind, and when I hit it, I was super young, and I'm like, no, I'm way too young to retire. I love this too much.
Funny you mentioned that book. I'm actually re-listening to the book for probably the third or fourth time, and today he was talking about definiteness of purpose, and having something. Most people fail because they don't really have a clear direction in mind, right? They're just kind of floating through life. But the first step is to have a really clear purpose that you're shooting for, and that all of a sudden things just start unfolding. So that's really awesome. Now I'm thinking, let's just say where somebody's listening and maybe they're broke and they're like, I want that. Like, I want that. Like, that sounds awesome. That's way better than anything I've ever even heard of, and I want that. I don't have much money now. Like, where would you say for this person to start? Like, how would you? Let's say they have an opportunity, right? If they're listening to this, they're probably in sales, probably doing door to door. They probably have an opportunity to make a lot of money. Mm-hmm. How would you kind of coach them through?
Sure, that's a great question. So I think the key to a lot of this success is having the ability to save money. So my business partner tells this really cool story about his great grandfather, who, when he passed away, owned hotels and had all these like really cool real estate assets. He was broke, just married, working at a gas station in, I think, rural Wyoming. And he's working there, and this really fancy car pulls up. And it was at the time where the gas attendants would fill up the gas, and so he goes out there to fill up the gas in this really fancy car. And the guy gets out of the car and is talking to this young boy, and he says, he ends up in the conversation, the young employee there asks the owner of the car, says, what can I do to be rich? Because he got to see this guy, and he's like, man, and the guy said, well, he says, first off, you need to be able to save your money. And the guy said, well, I only make, $2 a month or whatever. It was some ridiculously low number, right? And the guy goes, well, you can save 25 cents, can't you? And the young gas attendant looks at him and he says, well yeah, I could do that. He said, well, start there. And so that was the beginning of a mind shift for this young boy, that he could save money. And when you have the ability to save money, one, you learn great discipline, because there's probably some things, again, delayed gratification, that you want.
I know a lot of things.
Yeah, that you're like, oh no, I gotta save my money. Two, once you get a certain amount of savings saved up, when I broke off from the pest control business and I started in commercial real estate, it was all commission. And yeah, that's scary because it's not a steady paycheck or whatever, but I had $30,000 in the bank saved up. That, while it didn't alleviate all of the fear of going to an all-commission job, it sure gave me enough confidence, because I knew my budget was $2,500 a month, and I'm like, dude, I can live for a year and get by it before I make a deal, and hopefully I'll make a deal in a year. Well, I made my first deals in 3 months. I didn't have to wait a year, and everything was okay. But had I not had that money saved up, I don't know that I would have the confidence to take the risk on going to that opportunity, right? Or, for instance, if a deal comes up, how many people do you know where they've seen a deal come up and they recognized it was a deal and they knew it was a deal, but they didn't have the money to take advantage of it? Let's say a buddy comes to you, he's like, man, I've got to sell this car, and that car's worth $10,000. He's like, I just need some cash, man. Give me $5,000 and you can have it. Well, if you don't have $5,000, how are you going to make that deal? And you're not going to be able to go flip that and make a quick $5,000. You know what I'm saying? Just as an example, I'm sure all of us know someone in our life that missed out on an opportunity because they hadn't saved their money.
Is there a principle that you would give to somebody, like a percentage of their income that you would say?
Absolutely. I would say if you make $100, I would say learn to live on $70. I would take $10 and I would put it in a savings account to save for, whatever, new washing machine if it breaks down, whatever. I would take $10 and I would invest it. And I don't know what that means for different people. Some people it may be stock market, some people it may be flipping cars, some people it may be real estate, so I don't know, whatever.
And that could be saving to invest?
Exactly, right.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly, right. So $10 goes into just straight up savings for a rainy day, for an emergency fund. $10 goes into investing. And the other 10 I would give to charity. And whether that's your church or your parish or your mosque or your Red Cross, whatever. And I would give 10% to charity.
Nice, love that. Okay, so you're a real estate expert. So how would you coach somebody who's like, hey, real estate sounds awesome, passive income. I have some real estate. It's like probably the easiest money that I've ever made because it's passive, right? It's not active. I make money because I work and I own a business, but it's very active. I have to put a lot of time into that. Real estate stuff's super easy. Appreciation, right? Things appreciate over time. How would you advise somebody who wants to get into real estate don't know where to start, don't know what to do, where would you have to go?
It's kind of like anything, and I tell my kids the same principle. If there's something you want to do, odds are someone else has done it very well. And if you can spend time with people who you want to emulate or be like, or they've done what you want to do, that is well worth it. Even if you have to work with them for free for a bit, or hang out with them, or whatever that looks like. I don't know. For me, it was identifying a man named Roger Cox in our community who had been a successful developer. He had a commercial real estate brokerage. He was a football athlete. Just really cool guy. He was the guy on so many levels, and he'd done things that I wanted to do. And I went to him and I said, look, I would like to come learn how to do what you've done, and I want to work in your organization. Can I come do that? And he said, absolutely, come on. And so you've got to be around people that have already done what you want to do, and just be a sponge and absorb everything you can from them. And you'll pick up little things, little traits, little habits, little principles that they teach or practice, and even just being around them that will be essential. You know, like if I wanted to be a really good solar guy, for sure, I would go hang around you, big Nestor. Let me hang out with you, teach me, I'll come work for you, whatever. I want to learn the business. Whatever that is, if it's real estate, if it's investing in baseball cards, I don't know, whatever, right? Pick your poison.
Nice. And then how about like, do you have any principles for people doing their first real estate deal? Like whether it's their home
Sure.
or, like would you say like don't buy a home, buy a passive income and property? Would you say house hack and try to get a triplex? Like any principles there?
Sure, absolutely. For many of us, across the board, the easiest form of real estate to get into is a residential rental. And whether that's a single family home all the way up to a fourplex, right? That presents the easiest financing. There's long-term 30-year fixed rate financing for that. It presents really the lowest amount of capital that you need. You don't need crazy amounts of capital to do that relative to like a hotel I'm developing right now, right? So dipping your toe into that market. There's tons of information available on the internet. There's tons of books you can read. There's tons of people that have done this successfully and can tell you how to do it and whatnot. I think that would be one way. Another avenue that I think is even probably less capital intensive and is super intriguing, and I need a disclaimer here, like I have not done this. I know guys that do this, but I have personally not done this. But I know guys who will go, thanks to VRBO and Airbnb, they'll go find a property in a cool little attractive, eclectic place where tourists want to come and stay in that kind of market. And they'll go rent a place for a year and disclosing to the landlord, like, hey, just so you know, I'm going to sublease this to VRBO tenants. So as an example, I'm totally making numbers up, but let's say you could rent a place for $1,000. You sign a 1-year lease. So you're committed to $12,000 in rent. You also have to furnish it. And I don't know if you go on Craigslist or go to the Ashley Warehouse discount section, but make it, you got to furnish it. So whatever that costs you. You take those furnishings, you put them in there, you do it up nice. You go put it on VRBO, and I know guys that are leasing places for $1,000 a month to their landlord, but then making $5,000 a month in income from their VRBO because things rent more per night than they do per month.
Wow.
And they're paying the taxes and the cleaning fee or whatever, and they're keeping the spread. So let's say it was $1,000 in fees and you net $3,000 a month positive cash flow on that VRBO deal. Well, you keep that for a year and you've made $36,000 in positive cash flow. I know a guy that has 27 properties.
Really?
Yeah, and he doesn't own any of them.
Really?
He just rents them, he leases them out on VRBO and makes that spread. And so granted, it's not building wealth in the traditional sense, like, hey,
but it could be paying cash so
exactly.
that you can then go buy
Exactly.
the deal.
Your question was getting started, right? So
Yeah.
if you took that, let's say you had 3 of those properties, you're making $100,000 a year in positive cash flow. Well, now you maybe go put that as a down payment on a larger property, maybe a little apartment complex or a warehouse building, a commercial property, right? So that's usually the biggest challenge when you're getting started is getting enough cash so you can put something together and put down on something, right?
Love it, love it. You mentioned a couple books. I heard Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I heard Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
Is there any other books that really helped kind of shape your framework and your mindset?
Sure, there's a lot of classics. There's The Greatest Salesman by Og Mandino, if you need some of that. There's Richest Man in Babylon, which illustrates this, savings. There's Millionaire Next Door, and I didn't have to read I read a little bit of Millionaire Next Door, but I'm like, I could have wrote this book. This is me. I was born this way, right? I was born a type. Like, I'm not flashy. I don't need a Rolex. I don't need
And for those who don't know what the book, it's all about these millionaires that you would never expect. They drive the Toyota Tacoma that's 20 years old. They look and dress just like any average person, but that's because they're avid savers,
right? And
they're buying assets that ultimately produce cash flow.
Exactly. Yeah. So those are some of the classics, some of the great books. There's a book, if you want to invest specifically in real estate, there was a book by Robert Allen called No Money Down. And I'm not saying everybody could buy, a $100 million portfolio of real estate with no money down, but there's some principles in there, some cool ideas and thoughts and concepts for cash flow and refinancing and buying stuff and generating. So those are some of the kind of the early books that really kind of inspired me.
What advice, we'll close with this, what advice would you give your 22-year-old self today?
I would say, 100%, I would say, do a better job networking. So I was kind of, at that age, I was a little bit kind of like this, a little more naturally, just kind of maybe, I don't know, too focused on my world and this and that. And what I realized is there are networks of people out there. If you go out and you meet all these different people from all these different places and markets and different things, just going out and networking and developing relationships with people that then, as time goes on, you're like, oh, I need a guy that knows this. And you're like, dude, I got the guy. Or I wish, someone could help me through this. You're like, wait a minute, I met this one person over here. And just having these relationships and keeping in contact with these people, because that's one thing that's made a huge difference in my life. There's no been like silver bullet on, man, all of my deals come from this one secret spot. Like, man, and I keep it well guarded and I don't tell anybody. No, we've had awesome deals come to us from all different avenues, and it's because we went out and we networked and we grew relationships with people, and they're like, oh, when they're thinking of, man, who could I say this commercial real estate property to? Sigmon. Or who should we talk to about buying this hotel? I know Lance does, or whatever, because of the power of networking, right? I was terrible at that at the beginning, and I wish I would have been a lot better at that. I think my trajectory would have exploded quicker than it did.
Well, awesome, man. That's been super valuable. I'm sure everybody that's going to watch this will get a ton of value out of that. And appreciate your time.
Hey, anytime. Thanks, Mr.
Right.
Good times.